Welcome back to This Day in Irish History. I'm your host, Raymond Welsh. Before we dive into today's story, if you'd like to explore other significant events that happened on this day in Irish history, visit thisdayirishhistory.com. The link is in the episode description. Now, let's journey back to April 14th, 1920, and the quiet town of Miltown Malbay, County Clare, where a day meant for celebration turned into a tragedy now remembered as the Miltown Massacre. The backdrop to the events of that spring day was a country on the edge. By April 1920, Ireland was deep into the War of Independence. The Irish Republican Army was stepping up its campaign against British forces, and in response, the British government intensified its crackdown, deploying the Black and Tans and auxiliaries alongside the Royal Irish Constabulary. These new recruits, notorious for their brutality, were sent to suppress the Republican movement, but often did so by terrorizing civilian populations. April 14th began as a day of hope. News had arrived that Republican prisoners who had gone on a hunger strike in Mountjoy prison were to be released. In towns and villages across the country, including Miltown Malbay, people gathered to celebrate. Flags were flown, bands played, and impromptu parades filled the streets. But beneath the joy hung an ever-present tension. Any display of Republican sympathy could provoke a violent response from Crown forces. In Miltown Malbay, a crowd had gathered in the town square. Men, women, and children had come out to mark what they saw as a victory for justice and for the Republican cause. However, this peaceful assembly was soon disrupted. A convoy of RIC officers in Black and Tans arrived, and rather than observing or dispersing the crowd with warnings, they opened fire without provocation. Panic erupted. Shots rang out across the square. In the chaos, 3 people were killed. Among the dead was a young man named Seamus Hennessy, remembered in local lore as a quiet but steadfast supporter of the independence movement. Alongside him, 2 others lost their lives, ordinary citizens who had come to share in a moment of national solidarity. 7 more were wounded, including 2 schoolchildren, caught in the gunfire as they tried to flee. What happened in Miltown Malbay that day sent shockwaves across the country. It was far from an isolated event. By 1920, the Black and Tans had earned a reputation for violent reprisals, often indiscriminate, always brutal. But the Miltown Massacre struck a particularly deep chord. This was not an ambush or a battlefield confrontation. It was a celebration turned bloodbath, a clear illustration of the price civilians often paid in the crossfire of Ireland's fight for freedom. The British government, as it often did, claimed the forces were responding to provocation, but eyewitnesses, local clergy, and even some neutral observers refuted those claims. There was no ambush, no gunfire from the crowd, just music, flags, and a shared sense of relief that political prisoners would not be left to die in their cells. In the wake of the massacre, local communities rallied in grief and outrage. Funerals for the victims drew thousands, and in the absence of justice from British authorities, the Republican movement only grew stronger. Miltown Malbay became yet another name added to the growing list of towns scarred by Crown violence, a list that galvanized support for the independence cause across Ireland. Today, the Miltown Massacre is commemorated quietly but solemnly in County Clare. A plaque in the town square bears the names of those who died, and each year locals gather to remember not just the loss, but the resilience that followed. It serves as a stark reminder of how even the most joyful moments of that era could be shattered by the realities of occupation and resistance. Thank you for joining me on this journey through Ireland's rich past. Please like and subscribe, and until next time, I'm Raymond Welsh. Slán go fóill.